One of the most common traps that I see new print-on-demand Etsy sellers fall into is with shipping. Specifically, getting their shipping profiles set up and organized correctly between Etsy and their print-on-demand provider. It's not terribly glamorous as a topic, but it's honestly an issue that I continue to see happen again and again to new sellers. I hear about it in the Printify Rockstar Facebook group. I get questions about it all the time. So I see this as something that causes frustration for sellers and often creates a significant loss in profit as well. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Mandy, and as the owner of multiple six-figure businesses, including Etsy print-on-demand shops, my goal is to provide you with strategies to simplify the print-on-demand journey, scale your business faster, and ultimately achieve your own success as well. Now, the beauty of print-on-demand and why I personally love it so much is that you don't have to worry about fulfillment. If you've been on my channel for a while and heard my videos, you know that I also run a handmade business. So not having to worry about fulfillment is huge. I think this also applies to others who work 9-to-5s, stay-at-home moms who are busy all day with their kids, and anyone else who really only has a very small amounts of time to spend on any sort of other side business that they may want to explore. For me personally, I get to do all of my favorite parts like designing and doing research on different niches, and somebody else handles all the rest. That being said, there are some key settings that are important to get right to make sure that you're not losing out on profits, and one of those important settings is shipping. Quite often, new sellers in particular will simply leave the shipping settings as is when they set up their Etsy shop, which means they're setting up their Etsy shop, they're skipping over the shipping settings because they're assuming that they're coming from their print provider, and then when they actually create the product with a platform like Printify, they skip right over that drop-down menu where the default setting is that an automatic shipping profile will be created for every single new product that you create. The problem with that, though, is that you end up with a separate shipping profile for every single product and listing you create. This may not seem like a huge issue in the beginning when you only have a handful of listings, but once you get past that initial handful, I can promise you that it's going to become, quite frankly, an unmanageable mess, especially if you ever need to make changes down the road and as you're scaling your shop for growth. Adding to this, you might also find that including the full shipping cost as is from your print provider starts prohibiting some sales due to common retail buyer psychology, which basically says that many buyers will walk away from an item if they think the shipping rate is too high. But when presented with that item at a slightly higher cost, but with lower or free shipping, they'll typically buy it, even though the final cost of the two is exactly the same. As weird as this sounds, it's a very common buyer practice. The second issue that I typically see related to shipping is that sometimes sellers will set up a new shipping profile in Etsy, whether it's for free shipping or reduced flat rate shipping, and they don't turn off the default everywhere else in the Etsy shipping profile. And the problem with this is that this particular setting actually controls which countries will see your items to buy from. And let's be clear, it does not cost the same to ship to all other countries. So before you know it, if you're a US seller and you suddenly get a sale from someone in Germany, great, yay, sale. However, when you actually go to process that order with your print provider, you're probably going to get a very unpleasant surprise at how much it costs to ship that item to your customer. So unless you plan on going back to that customer to ask for more money, not only are you going to not make any profit for this sale, you're actually going to lose a lot of money in the process. And that is not what I want to see happen for you. So for today's video, I want to walk you through how to make sure you know exactly what your product is going to cost for shipping, some options for making sure that that cost is covered and that you're not losing your profits, and some examples of how I keep my own shop's shipping profiles organized to keep things simple and streamlined. So the first step is understanding how much your item is going to cost for shipping. And to do that, when you are in the product catalog and you click on an item, you'll see the options for the various print providers if you're using Printify. When you click on the more details and click on the shipping tab above, you'll see exactly what the item will ship for to the various countries. You'll see the first item, which means if a customer orders one of that particular product, and then you'll see additional item for any additional products that they order of that exact product. And then finally, when it comes to setup, there's a few things you want to make sure you know going into it. Number one, you want to make sure that you find the zip code for the different printing providers that you plan on shipping with. You'll see in some of my examples that I prefer to have my shipping profiles split out by provider. So when a customer sees the estimated delivery time, they get an accurate representation of about how long it will take to get from the printer's facility to them in whatever state or country that they're in. And the only way to really make sure that that's accurate is by having the actual location where fulfillment is taking place. Most of the time I simply Google it. So when I use SwiftPod, for example, I'll simply Google SwiftPod fulfillment and I'll get an address with a zip code. Some providers do have multiple facilities across the country. And if that's the case, just pick one. You're not always going to know which one it's coming from. And sometimes it will depend on the location that it's shipping to. They'll sometimes divert it to different locations. Not all sellers do this. Sometimes they'll just use one, and that's okay too. I personally just like to make sure it's accurate for the customer experience, and I just do the best I can with the location information that I have. It's not always going to be 100% perfect, but it's generally going to be pretty close. And then finally, you want to make sure you've decided which countries you plan on opening up your shop to. For me, I'm in the US, and so to keep things relatively simple, I ship to the United States, and then I also ship to Canada. And that's because there's no customs to worry about going into Canada. And because I primarily sell apparel, I like to use Duplium as my print provider, and I can easily change my orders to ship through them whenever I get Canadian orders coming in. If you're just starting out and you want to keep it simple, I recommend sticking with whatever country you're selling in and start there just to get used to the process. I don't recommend adding in complicated layers to your print-on-demand process until you really master the basics and feel comfortable with it. Then as you start to get the hang of the process, you can add on additional countries if you'd like to. Then you need to make sure you figure out how you're going to cover the cost of that shipping, whether that's going to be free or whether you're going to charge a certain amount per item and then a certain amount for any additional item after that. As I said before, oftentimes what you see in the print provider for a shipping cost is higher than what a lot of customers prefer to pay. So in order to accommodate that, there are a couple different ways that you can approach this. One, you can offer free shipping. If you do that, that means that you need to make sure you build in most or all of that cost into the final pricing of your item, which is what the customer will pay. Always make sure that you are using a profit calculator, whether that's from eRank or Etsy Hunt or a spreadsheet like what I have in my Patreon group, to make sure that you're figuring out all of those costs and factoring them into that final price so that you're not undercutting your profit margins. The other approach is to split the difference with your customers. So for example, if it costs $8.49 for a sweatshirt to ship to a customer in the US, perhaps you set up your shipping profiles to where the customer will pay for $4 of that cost, and then you build in the rest of it into the price. What that can do is it can help to lower the final sell price that your customer sees a little bit, but then you'll still be accounting for some of that shipping cost to really balance out the final cost of the product along with the cost of the shipping that the customer sees. In any circumstance, always make sure that if it's not being built into the shipping cost, that you're folding that cost into the price of the item. I can't stress enough how important it is to use those profit calculators to make sure that you're covering all your bases. The other reason that you want to make sure you're building in all of your costs is that if you decide to add on additional product offerings to your shop, so for example, let's say you start with sweatshirts from one print provider and you want to add on tote bags from another provider. So if someone buys a sweatshirt and a tote bag and that order connects over to Printify, because those come from different print providers, are going to charge you separate shipping for both. That means you need to make sure that your shipping is covered. That is why I always fold in most of the shipping costs into the price of my products, so that no matter what setup I'm using, no matter what print provider it's coming from, I always make sure that on each of those items, I have my costs covered. Free shipping also becomes a factor if you've got the free shipping guarantee turned on in Etsy, meaning that US orders that are $35 or more will ship for free. This is fine if you've completely built in your shipping costs, but the problem that I often see is that sellers will create a shipping profile to charge a customer, turn on the free shipping guarantee, but then all of their items are priced, let's say $39 or above, which means that everything at that point is going to fall under the free shipping guarantee anyway. So at that point, the shipping profile is pretty much useless because nothing will ever qualify for that unless you turn off that free shipping guarantee. What I recommend in all of these scenarios, again, if you heard me say it once, you've probably heard me say it 1,000 times, is run a few scenarios through a profit calculator. And if you're wanting to charge shipping to a customer, play around with those numbers to see what makes the most sense in terms of balancing the cost of the shipping for the customer and what you end up rolling into that final sell price. And don't forget to make sure you factor in any discounts that you plan on offering within your shop. If you'd like to see a couple comparisons on how to run these numbers with a profit calculator that I use, be sure to check out the video that I've linked below where I talk about profits related to different types of sweatshirts. Regardless of what type of product you plan on selling, the same principle still applies. Once you've got all that information ready, then you can head to Etsy and set up your shipping profiles or clean up what's already there. Once you're in Etsy settings, you'll be able to identify how you want to ship your items, whether that's with a fixed rate or a calculated rate. I don't recommend using calculated for print on demand just because it's going to be really hard to know exactly how much everything weighs when it's ready to ship, and it's just going to be more complicated than you really want to deal with. So always use the fixed rate, and then you'll essentially just be deciding whether you're going to use free shipping or a flat rate amount. From there, you're setting your country of origin, and then you're also setting the zip code. Again, the fastest way to do that is simply Google the fulfillment center and find that out. Next, you're filling out processing time. Be careful with this one. You don't want to set that window too short because sometimes delays happen and you want to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room because you're not in control of the fulfillment that's happening. This is especially important around the holidays when things can sometimes take a little bit longer. I personally recommend using the custom range for the processing time, and then I will usually set that to 2 to 7 business days. Most providers are typically shipping within 2 to 3, but again, that gives you plenty of wiggle room in case there are any delays. Then you'll get into the standard shipping section, and this is where you can select the service and what you plan on charging. For most apparel, I'm typically selecting USPS first class. Depending on your product and your print provider, sometimes they will be coming from other shipping carriers, but if you're in the US, generally this is pretty accurate. I used to recommend using the other option that was always at the bottom of this list, and it's still there for now, but I've noticed that for some sellers, Etsy is requiring them to change it to something other than other, and that's fine because really that other was really just to set a longer shipping time if needed, but generally that 1 to 5 days from USPS will work just fine. It won't impact tracking either because regardless of which carrier it comes from, when that tracking number is provided by Printify, it will sync up to whichever shipping carrier was used for it. Then you're going to select what you'll charge, and this is where you'll be selecting either free shipping or a fixed rate. If it's free shipping, that's all you'll need to fill out and select. If it's a fixed rate, then you'll need to add in how much you're charging for one item and then how much you're charging for each additional item after that. As I mentioned before, I do also ship to Canada, so if you plan on setting up any additional countries, this is the place to do that. And you'll want to be specific. You want to make sure you're not just using that everywhere else, because that is where you will run into problems with getting charged a lot for shipping from your print provider that you may not be planning on. And again, within Printify, whenever you're looking at that shipping tab, you will see how much it costs to ship to other countries, and so you can use that as your guide. The good news is that once you have your shipping profiles set up and how you like them, you can go back in and delete all of the other profiles. And you can do that in one of 2 ways. One of them is to simply go in and individually delete them. And when you hit on the little garbage can on the right-hand side, it will ask you if you want to move any products associated with that profile to a different one. And so right there in one step, you can easily select which new shipping profile that you created you want to associate that product with. The other option is from your listing view in your seller dashboard, you can select multiple products and move them as a group. So once you select that little checkbox for each product that you want to move to the same shipping profile, select that, then head up to the top edit listings, select the checkbox for all of the listings that you want to move to the same shipping profile, and then you'll head up to the drop down where it says editing options, go to the shipping profile option, and then from there you can select which shipping profile you want to move all of them all at once. Super easy. So then when you're done, you should have a nice organized list of each of your shipping profiles within your products associated with each of those shipping profiles. The other nice thing about having these shipping profiles set up is that they sync back into Printify. So then when you're creating new product listings, you can actually select the corresponding Etsy shipping profile directly within Printify, and then you don't have to mess with any of these steps after the fact. And if you decide down the road that you want to make changes to your Etsy shipping profile, you simply make those changes on the Etsy side of things, and it'll automatically sync with Printify. It makes things much, much cleaner. As an example, in 2 of my shops, for one of them, I use SwiftPod for pretty much everything. So you can see I've got one in there for SwiftPod where it's free, where I was using that for a while, and then I have a newer one that I've started using where I'm really playing around with splitting that cost difference with customers. And so you can see that I've got some different ones in there for t-shirts versus sweatshirts. And I do that because with my listings that are t-shirts, those are lower profit margins. And so in order to remain competitive with those prices, I keep the pricing on the t-shirts a little bit lower, but then I pass on some of that direct cost to the customer. And I've done the same thing with sweatshirts as well. I do still have my free shipping guarantee turned on, so depending on how many items a customer orders, it kind of depends on how it plays out. And that's kind of the give and take when you have free shipping turned on, as well as a shipping profile with a fixed cost. There are going to be some orders where your profit's a little bit lower and some where it's a little bit higher. But at the end of it, it all kind of washes out and averages out. And then in the shop that you've seen me build here for my channel, you can see that I use a variety of different providers with this. And so while I do have free shipping turned on for this particular shop, I do have the separate printers listed out in different profiles so that based on what a customer is ordering, they're getting more accurate delivery date details based on where they live. I also like to keep them organized because I might down the road decide that for some products from some providers, I might want to change the pricing structure or change that up. And so by having them split out like this and organized a little differently, I'm able to more collectively make those changes in just one fell swoop of the shipping profile versus having to go in and touch all of those listings or do something different. Again, it's really just a balance of making sure I have an efficient process and also making sure all of my costs are covered. I hope this has been helpful. I'm actually going to be doing a Q&A video soon. So if you've got a question that you've always wanted to ask, drop them down below in the comments. It can be about Etsy or running a handmade business, my past career in HR, print on demand, all the things. Drop your questions in the comments and I will go through and I will try to answer as many as I can in rapid fire fashion in an upcoming video. Again, I hope these videos are helpful for you. If you want to learn more about my strategies for print-on-demand success and how I built my own print-on-demand business to 6 figures in less than a year, make sure you're subscribed to my channel and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming content. And in the meantime, if you haven't already, make sure that you check out the dedicated playlist that has my masterclass course. I've got it linked in the description for you as well. Thank you so much as always for being here, and I'll see you on the next one. And if you're looking for more helpful ways to continue the work and stay connected, I invite you to join me over on Patreon, where I provide a membership to get exclusive access to my Google Drive with all sorts of wonderful tools and resources that I've created and continue adding to every month. It's also a place to join conversations as I think about future content and how I can serve you with the most amount of value. I also hope that you'll smash that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on all of the exciting upcoming content that I've got planned for this channel. And finally, I invite you to check out my brand new website where you can subscribe to my own email list, follow along on new blog content that I will be building, and access other freebies that I have available on there to support you on your journey.